The body of written works and accompanying illustration produced in order to entertain or instruct young people. The genre encompasses a wide range of works including acknowledged classics of world literature, picture books, and easy-to-read stories written exclusively for children, lullabies, fables, folk songs, and other primarily orally transmitted materials.
What is literature? In the term children's literature, the most important word is literature. For the most part, the adjective imaginative is to be felt as preceding it. It comprises that vast, expanding territory recognizably staked out for a junior audience, which does not mean that it is not also intended for seniors. Adults admittedly make up part of its population. Children's books are written, selected for publication, sold, bought, reviewed, and often read aloud by grown-ups. Sometimes they seem also to be written with adults in mind, as for example, the popular French Asterix series of comics parodying history. Nevertheless, by a large number, there is a sovereign republic of children's literature.
The case for a children's literature. Independent to the degree that while it must meet many of the standards of adult literature, it has also developed aesthetic criteria of its own by which it may be judged. According to some of its finest practitioners, it is independent too, as the only existing literacy medium enabling certain things to be said that would otherwise remain unsaid or unsayable.
Shifting vision of the child even after the child had been recognized, his literature on occasion persisted in viewing him as diminutive adult. More characteristically, however realistic that is non-fantastic fiction is all counters regarded the discovered child in a mirror that provided only a partial reflection of him. More frequently, however, children's literature portrays the young as types.
Slow development, a third universal feature, children's literature appears later than adult and grows more slowly. As for content, after World War II, did it exploit certain realistic themes and attitudes, turning on race, class, war, and sex that had been part of general literature at least since the 1850s. Fourth, the tempo of development varies sharply from country to country and from region to region. It is plausible that England seems to create a complex children's literature, while a less developed region, the Balkans, for example, might not.
The didactic versus the imaginative. While the didactic and the imaginative are conveniently thought of as polar, they need not always be inimical. This general feature is the creative tension resulting from a constantly shifting balance between two forces, that of the pulpit schoolroom and that of the imagination.
The development of children's literature. Keeping these five general features in development in mind, certain criteria may now be suggested as helpful in making a gross estimate of the degree of that development within any given country. Some of these are criteria artistic. In what seems their order's importance in these criteria are:
degree of awareness of the child's identity, programs made beyond passive dependence of moral tradition, folklore, and legend, rise of a class professional writers, as distinct from moral reformers, school teachers, clerics, or versatile journalists, degree of dependence from authoritarian controls, number of classics, influence of which transcends national boundaries, number of new forms or genres, and the exploitation of a variety of traditional ones, measure of dependence on translations, quantity of primary literature, quantity of secondary literature, and level of institutional development. There are varied comparisons among literature across the globe. In the situation of West versus East, there is a gap separating of the Far East from that of the West. Eastern literature, particularly New Guinea, have not advanced beyond the stage of oral tradition. Some had been handicapped with language problems, while most advanced is Japan. While in the case of North versus South, in Western Europe there is a sharp variation of unevenness, as between North and South in the tempo of development. While in Latin America, the close connection of the church with the child's family and school life was encouraged, a literature stressing piety, and this at a time when the West, at least in its northern latitudes, is concerned less with the salvation than with the imagination of the child. In contemporary times, since the 1930s, the quality and weight of American children's literature were sharply affected by the business of publishing, as well as the social pressures to which children, like adults, were subjected. Intensified commercialization and broad-front expansion had some good effects and some bad ones as well. Not only to this country, whose literature are varied, but as well as to the other nations such as in Sweden, Russia, Germany, Austria, Finland, and France. This explains the diversity of the human mind in the matter of crafting and creating ideas, which allows the people to find it significant towards being a lifelong learner. Moreover, literature is a vast compilation of ideas that up until today we thrive to pass down from generation to generation. With literature, we learn things including origin, dating back to centuries, old stories, fairy tales, legends, and the like. Here is an example of a good literature.
The Diary of Anne Frank. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hope race within us, only to meet the horrible truth and to be shattered. Yet, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart.
The Diary of Anne Frank is not a novel or a tale of the imagination. It is a diary kept by a young Jewish girl for the 2 years she was forced to remain in hiding by the Nazi persecution of the Jews of Europe. Anne Frank recorded her feelings, her emotions, and her thoughts, as well as the events that happened to her, in the diary which her father had given her as a birthday present. It is an accurate record of the way a young girl grows up and matures, and the very special circumstances in which Anne had found herself throughout the 2 years during which she was in hiding. And it is also a vividly terrifying description of what it was like to be a Jew, hiding at a time when the Nazis sought to kill all the Jews of Europe. In the few entries which she wrote before the family went into hiding, Anne went to school, had girlfriends and boyfriends, went to parties and to ice cream parlors, rode her bike, and chattered in class. The pages of Anne's diary, which the Nazis left scattered on the floor when they arrested the group in hiding, were kept. When Mr. Frank returned after the war, they gave him the pages of Anne's diary, and he eventually published them. And so, although Anne died, as the Nazis had intended, her spirit lives on, through her diary, stronger and clearer by far than any brute force or blind hatred.